Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and as of this day of recording, I finally cooked up as soon as humanly possible regarding the version 2.7 CM Pony opinions, because I believe that this patch has been one of, if not the most cinematic livestream that I've seen coming out of honkaistarrail for a really long time, right? I'm pretty sure everybody is interested. Should you even be putting for Sunday and Fugue? So at this point, I'm pretty sure you guys are all wondering, who should we even be putting for between version 2.7 supports version 3.0 DPS, as well as the fact that we do have a couple of reruns here and there, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! Okay, so the very first thing is that the estimated pool income, if you want to compare version 2.7 to version 2.6, it actually went down by a little bit. If you don't really care about the calculations, as once again, as usual, these are just estimations. We actually go down between both patches from 113 pools in version 2.6 to 79 pools in version 2.7, and this is going to be 137 to 103 and 145 to 101 for the monthly pass as well as the monthly plus battle pass respectively, right? So definitely things are looking a little bit tight for the free to plays as well as even the low spenders, especially if you're thinking of putting for more than just a single copy or even multiple copies of different units. So jumping straight into our very first unit is going to be Sunday, which has been one of, if not the more popular units that have been teased out since version 2.7 came out, right? Seen the whole Twitter post, everybody wants it, all that kind of stuff. He is going to be our first ever summon hyper carry support, where he can choose both the main target and the summon unit of the main target, and giving them a 100% action value advance, as you guys have seen from the live stream where both Jing Yuan and his Lightning Lord can take action immediately following Sunday's skill, right? On top of that, he also provides us with a couple of crit damage buffs, and being an energy battery from his ultimate. Sunday's early access video is also going to be coming out extremely soon, basically in a couple of days, so stay tuned to find out more exactly on what he's going to be capable of doing in the future, right? No idea what his talent does, whereas his technique is going to be a higher damage buff, right? So our first ever direct summon support, Sunday, is going to be, generally speaking, the bridge between the version 2 supports that haven't really quite reached version 3 going forward into the version 3 archetype that is going to be the summon meta, as we have been seen from the teaser provided by the livestream just now, right? So we currently only have Jing Yuan, Topaz, Lingsha, and Jing Yuan stands to be the one gaining the most amount of value from a Sunday support because of the way that he interacts with Lightning Lord, and Lightning Lord is just a very slow unit, giving him one of, if not the biggest upgrades ever since its release in version 1.0. But I'll kind of talk about this a little bit in Jing Yuan's rerun banner, right? So his supplementary 4-stars are going to be QQ, Arthur, and Ting Yuan, and frankly speaking, at this point, I don't really think anybody's too interested in them, except for a E6 Ting Yuan perhaps, right? So that's going to be that. And the overall verdict for Sunday is going to be, if you want to prepare for the summon meta coming in version 3, or if you're simply a hyper carry enjoyer, you're still using Jing Liu, Blade, Imbibitor, Nune, Silla, any sort of kind of hyper carry, you can definitely find a lot of value pulling for Sunday. Otherwise, if you're already set into the current two, or rather top 2 meta comps, which is going to be the Super Break team as well as the follow-up team, then his pool value is basically just a roughly 5 out of 10, right? So CM believes that if we take away from the summons, just from a hyper carry standpoint alone, his buff already look extremely overloaded, because compared to Sparkle, which is a 50% action value, which sometimes doesn't really quite hit the mark, especially if you've won extremely tight action value manipulation, some might say that Sunday will power creep all version 1 and version 2 hypercarry buffers, namely Bronya, Ting Yuan, and even Sparkle. For now, between all of the summon units such as Jing Yuan, Topaz, as well as Lingsha, Jing Yuan's Lightning Lord has no means of action value advance, unlike Topaz and Lingsha, and it has the lowest base speed of only 60 going up to 160, which means that he can only go once per wave every single time, right? Whereas Topaz and Lingsha, they can use their skills, have more bunnies, have more summons, and each individual hits from Nambi as well as Fugue is not as damaging compared to Lightning Lord. Not to mention, Lightning Lord is also extremely susceptible to debuffs, crowd controls, and Sunday perfectly fixes this problem for Jing Yuan, right? So these are gonna be extremely important, especially if you want to consider Sunday Sunday for a DPS like Jing Yuan or even future summon DPSs that he can work with, right? Not to mention, finally, is that Topaz and Lingsha, they both have very good roles, both in follow-up as well as Super Break team comps, so it is quite unlikely that players will find themselves pulling for Sunday specifically just for Topaz hyper carry or like, I don't know, a Lingsha hyper carry. But that being said, Jing Yuan is ultimately still going to be a version 1, no, not even version 1, patch 1.0 DPS alongside Scylla, right? And with the release of Aglaea as well as Remembrance MC, or even more summon DPS from the Path of Remembrance as we have seen from the livestream, Sunday will probably, most likely, almost certainly have more DPS to work with besides Jing Yuan. And our current best in slot with Sunday, it might probably be Jing Yuan, but it kind of brings back to the situation where Jing Yuan's best partner right now is going to be Sunday, but it is very unlikely that Sunday's best partner is going to be Jing Yuan going forward in the future, right? So for players who are considering to play a summon meta, but you don't really want to pull for Sunday right now because you either don't feel confidence in Jing Yuan's strength or you're still very comfortable with follow-up team comp and Super Break, you could consider waiting for a Sunday rerun going forward in the future patches, because from past history, we have known that every single time a quote-unquote game-breaking DPS comes out, they are always accompanied by a equally game-breaking support, right? As you have seen from the Ramei rerun from Firefly, as well as the Robin rerun with Fei Xiao. So in the future for version 3, well, maybe 3.0, 3.1, or even 3.2, it is not impossible to see Sunday getting a rerun if we are going to be getting an absolute powerhouse of a summon DPS. So just something for you guys to consider, especially if you are kind of struggling between should you be pulling for Sunday or Fugue or any other future version 3.0 DPS, right? Players without Sunday and you guys still have break and flop team comps and you don't want to play summon DPS right now because there's basically only Jing Yuan, feel free to consider your options before committing to Sunday, right? So that is going to be that for Sunday. And now jumping into Fugue, our quote-unquote exo toughness break support, even though they changed the exo toughness into another name which I can't remember, but I'm just gonna call it exo toughness, right? It is basically the exact same as exo toughness, with Harmony MC being teased into transforming for Remembrance MC. Fugue will definitely be the direct successor, or you could even consider it as upgrade for Harmony MC slot, right? Exo toughness mechanic by itself, as you guys have seen from the current Memory of Chaos 12 update, brings Super Breakers to pretty much the next level to compete, if not remain relevant, with the version 3.0 DPS or the summon meta, right? So for a skill, is gonna be allowing our target to ignore weakness for toughness reduction, as well as providing some relevant buffs. And our ultimate is gonna be dealing AoE damage, and as well as the fact that it does ignore the toughness typing. And finally, the most important part is definitely going to be your talent, which does have exo toughness plus Super Break with absolutely zero trigger conditions. And then for the basic attack, which is going to be the enhanced basic attack after using a skill, which is basically a destruction targeting with one main target and 3 adjacent targeting. So if every single enemy they are weak to fire, you just do a little bit more toughness damage and it allows you to break a little bit faster, right? So then finally, her technique is going to be an extra value advance plus applying the defense ignore, same as the ones from her skill. At this point, while it is no longer called exo toughness, Fugue's talent is absolutely the key to bring our DPS into version 3 in order to compete with the endgame content with all of our other new toys, right? With the ability to ignore toughness typing, it also drastically improves Fugue's flexibility with pretty much any DPS, although Firefly's Fire Implant will still help to improve our uptime as well as our break speed by granting our break sustains, which are currently only limited to Fire Gallagher and Fire Lingsha, and it will allow us to basically break a lot faster and trigger our exo toughness faster as well, right? So generally speaking, if you guys are thinking about pulling for Super Break, if you guys are thinking of building a break comp, and if you guys are thinking of changing your Harmony MC to Remembrance MC, then Fugue is going to be an excellent choice. Our supplementary Forza is going to be Gallagher, Yuko, and Misha. Out of all these, Gallagher items are pretty much the only ones still relevant as of this day and age, right? So for the verdict is going to be this. Roughly speaking, as you guys can see from the diagram, Fugue is essentially the Shangwei T-Tai or the upgrade compared to Harmony MC. If you are playing a Super Break, and I believe this is going to be majority of players, it is going to be a 10 out of 10. Otherwise, it's just like Sunday, it's going to be a roughly 5 out of 10, right? So CM believes that Fugue inherently holds a little bit more value for the majority of players because Ranmei and Firefly has some of, if not the highest own rates across the entire player base, not just in EN but also in CN, due to Super Break just being such an extremely easy to build meta team, as well as being extremely easy to use meta team ever since Harmony MC got announced, right? And as we pivot Harmony MC to Remembrance MC, this slot, it has to be filled up by a second break support, and luckily for us, Fugue perfectly fits this role for players looking to make the change for Remembrance MC. Considerations are definitely going to be as follows, namely, who is going to be Fugue's best in slot break DPS? Is it going to be Boot Heal, Firefly, or Rapper? For Boot Heal, with Exo Toughness, we can stack out our talent stacks a lot faster. Rapper also gains more charges, multipliers, as well as the additional energy, while Firefly is just going to be a raw damage increase unless players have an E2 Firefly, but Firefly also allows the additional toughness damage from Lingsha and Gallagher if we do have the Fire Witness implant, right? Also, one thing to consider, something not here, which is basically, if players do not need to pivot from Harmony MC to Remembrance MC, like you guys still want to stay with Harmony MC, then technically speaking, Fugue's pool value is not going to be as important for you. She is a upgrade, but it's not a upgrade to Harmony MC that could change everything. Or rather, if you guys don't pull Fugue and you still want to stick with the free Harmony MC with Ranmei, sustain, as well as your break DPS, they are very likely still going to be capable of clearing your endgame content. But then again, who knows what's going to happen in endgame content when version 3 comes out, because as we've seen from the past, the brand new Super Break, it definitely made a previous archetype fall off extremely quickly, namely the hyper carry as well as the DOT meta, right? So at this point, only time can tell what is going to happen in the future. Alright, now for our very first rerun banner is going to be Jing Yuan. As mentioned from the Sunday 7, he is currently our strongest summon DPS across Jing Yuan, Topaz, as well as Lingsha, if you can even call Lingsha a crit DPS, right? So this is going to be Jing Yuan's second rerun, and Jing Yuan with Sunday is going to be the perfect way to give Sunday a best in slot DPS for now, because Topaz is currently going with Robin and Facial, March 7, all that kind of stuff, and Lingsha is currently going with Ranmei, fulfilling her role as a healer, right? So Lightning Lord has a lot of value to gain from Sunday's skill, and he has been getting quite a lot of indirect buffs ever since his release in version 1.0, and now Sunday will at least improve Jing Yuan's tiers, in my opinion, by half a tier, if not by 2 full tiers, right? That being said, the rerun value for Jing Yuan is absolutely gonna be at a 0 out of 10. Rest in peace, just like an E0 inhibitor to Nick, right? So unfortunately for Jing Yuan, he is in an extremely uncomfortable position, because you're essentially sandwiched between 2 meta-defining supports as well as the version 3 DPS coming 1 patch later. Not to mention, as you've seen from the estimated pool income, the amount of pools that we are getting as a free-to-play or even a low spender are quite limited compared to version 2.6. So if you guys have not been saving your pools, it is quite unlikely you're going to be able to get both Sunday plus Jing Yuan, and you still want to pivot into summon meta going forward in the future. It's going to be very difficult unless you're extremely lucky, right? And something to consider is that the Aglaea and Remembrance MCTs from the drip marketing, they are very likely going to be the next summon DPS, with Aglaea quite literally being the lightning element. So as you have seen from the past performances, the whole Jing Liu Acheron, or even Acheron and Jing Yuan, DPS just tend to not age as well in Honkai compared to supports or even sustains, right? So it is what it is. Although Jing Yuan does stand to gain the most from Sunday's arrival, because his kit does gain the most amount of benefits from Sunday's kit, a big increase, right? A big gain, it doesn't translate into being all of a sudden the best team comp against our current meta team comps, right? Namely our follow-up team comp, Super Break, Acheron with Jiao Qiu and Yun Li, right? So players who do have Jing Yuan and want to pull for additional islands to either make their Jing Yuan stronger or to make their summon DPS stronger, it is more advised to pull for Sunday's islands instead, in order to pivot Sunday into the future summon DPSs. Keep in mind, he is an Ankh, right? He has been in the game for a very long time. Version 1.0 with version 1.0 kits, 1.0 islands, 1.0 talents, and even 1.0 multipliers. If you want to see an example, just take a look at Scylla's ultimate compared with Facial's ultimate in this day and age, and you can see just with time itself, DPS just tend to fall very quickly. So it is what it is. Ultimately going to be a 0 out of 10. And then going forward to our next rerun is going to be Firefly. Now this is a little bit more interesting and not so straightforward, right? So she is going to be pretty much one of, if not the most universal Super Break DPS we have right now, and she is like the people's girlfriend from the whole Panic story, right? Firefly has pretty much been the most, if not one of the most beginner-friendly DPSs we have gotten ever since the arrival of Silverbreak from Harmony MZ as well as Ranmei, allowing Firefly to easily full clear most, if not all, of the endgame content even at E0S0, minus pure friction. Pure friction, she's not doing too good, right? So the reason why is because she does have a universal utility with the Fire Weakness implant, ignores any element unless they have toughness lock, right? She's also extremely easy to use and to build. No speed tuning, no action value manipulation, no turn orders, essentially just plug and go. And even if you don't really hit the Firefly's 155 speed or 149 speed if you're running E5 or E6, it doesn't really matter that much anyways, because this is only useful for 0 cycles, and at the grand scheme of things, she's still very fast. You don't even need a super fast Firefly and she can still perform extremely well, right? She also synergizes very well with Gallagher and Lingsha plus Fugue. All three of them being fire element, which means that we do have very high toughness efficiency when all of them deal the fire toughness damage against the enemy with the fire weakness, right? She's also not relying on our S1, so Aeon is an excellent alternative, and E2 Firefly is gonna be extremely skill point positive while dealing tremendous damage very quickly, and this is going to actually stand a lot to gain, especially with Fugue, because of how exo toughness works, right? So if players are thinking of getting an E2 Firefly, she technically gains a lot more compared to an E0 Firefly once we pair up with Fugue and we remove Harmony Trailblazer. So with that, the overall verdict is going to be this. If you are someone that skipped Repa and Boot Heal, and you want to pull for Fugue, you want to get your hands into Super Rig, and you basically don't really have a choice anymore, then she's gonna be a 9 out of 10, right? If you're looking to pull for Idolence, either E2 or E6, honestly, still quite valuable, but this is also granted you are pulling for Fugue with Exo Toughness, right? But finally, if you already have Repa or Boot Heal, or if you're just simply not interested in the Super Break archetype, then it is going to be a 1 out of 10. So CM believes that Firefly is going to be an excellent pick, especially for the new players that are just entering the game after hearing the absolute banger live stream. You just joined version 2.7, prepare yourself for 3.0, all that kind of stuff. So at this point, you can't get Ranmei, right? We haven't got a Ranmei rerun, so you basically only have Fugue. So if you're a new player, not necessarily a free-to-play, but maybe a new spender, you can get both Fugue and Firefly at the same time. So at this situation, her performance without Ranmei, you could consider running Harmony MC plus Fugue plus the sustain and Firefly, and it should be quite viable for a comfortable clear experience. That being said, we don't really know how Fugue works at the moment, her values, her multipliers, so that is gonna have to wait a little bit, 1 week before Christmas, before we can find out a little bit more concretely, right? On top of that, the investments on Firefly's E2 or even E6 can greatly elevate her shelf life and performance as we go into version 3, unless more Super Break units are going to be released in quick succession, although this is very unlikely since we literally just got Repa last patch, and Aglaea and Remembrance MC, they are teased to be summon units, so unless Big Herta or D Herta is going to be another Super unit, it is quite unlikely that we are going to be facing competition for Firefly or the whole Super archetype. That being said, do be aware of any toughness lock enemies in the future, especially if the endgame content decides to upsell summon meta and downplay the Super meta. The reason why I say this is because something very similar happened with the ushering of the Super meta, where units like Hyper Carry or even DOT, they haven't gotten any buffs, any benefits, and it gets increasingly like fighting an uphill battle if you want to go against the flow of what is currently the flavor of the patch, which is probably going to be summoned, right? So it might be really bad if somehow the endgame content does introduce any sort of toughness lock, in which this case, the entire Fugue and Firefly archetype or their usefulness will collapse very substantially, right? So something to consider. At this point, we can kind of come to the summary. If you want a summon support Sunday, if you want a Super Break support Fugue, or for new players and you really pull for Fugue, then you are going to be getting a Firefly, right? So potential winners for both Sunday and Fugue. For Sunday, he is not a team-wide action value advance, and he might also face skill point issues because I don't see any mentions of any skill point generation, so this could lead to more stringent requirements when it comes to action value speed tuning. Also, something similar happened in version 2, which is the release of Robin following Sparkle, and ever since the release of Robin, anytime you want to use Sparkle, you can pretty much just slap on Robin and she will literally do the job better than Sparkle. So in the future, if we get any sort of a summon support that can somehow buff more than one summon DPS at the same time, then Sunday would be a little bit cooked. in that regard. So something for you guys to consider. And then for Fugue, her performance without Rame might be lacking, as with performance of any of these Super Break archetype. So Rame is just her. And also, she doesn't really have a lot of value if you guys don't want to pivot away from Harmony MC, as we mentioned. It might not be worth the Stellar Jades, especially when there's so many enticing units in the horizon, right? Somewhat similar to a whole Gallagher versus E0 Ezio Lingsha situation, especially if you don't want to use Remembrance MC. Frankly speaking, version 2.7 is looking to be quite rough for the free-to-plays or even the low spenders, right? Frankly speaking, both supports, they have pretty high pool value because you want to think about opportunity cost. If you pull for Sunday because you want to play the summon meta, that means you will quite likely invest in the Remembrance MC, right? Because you are going to be going for summon, and Remembrance MC very likely is going to be quite crucial for the summon meta, unless you're just completely fucking useless. Which means the Harmony MC slot will now be empty. So for summon meta players that used to play Super Break, you might need to pull for Fugue just to slot into the Harmony MC slot, right? So it's a little bit of a conundrum. Whereas for the other hand, if you are not interested in the summon meta and you want to pull for Fugue, you can just stick to Harmony MC. So it doesn't really have that much of a concern if you pull Fugue or don't pull for Fugue, and you could just wait for version 3. And second of all, you might see problems with the new endgame, since all of the endgame so far has catered very heavily to the archetype, like I mentioned just now, for this work, right? So version 2.7, honestly, there isn't really a very straightforward and clear-cut answer. It really depends on what the future holds, which technically no one knows, and it really depends on what is your personal preference when it comes to the overall damage and team archetypes, right? Do you like summon more, or do you like Super Break more? Do you like to use Harmony MC more, or do you still want to go with the Remembrance MC? Are you okay with Super Break potentially falling out of meta, as we have seen what happening in version 1 and version 2, or how dedicated are you to the summon meta as a whole in general, right? So as of this point, look forward to the creator experience server, where I'll be diving into Sunday really quick, and then 1 week before Fugue, we're going to dive into Fugue, right? So with that, we have come to the end of CM pulling opinions for version 2.7 featuring Sunday, Fugue, Jing Yuan, as well as Firefly, right? Leave your thoughts in the comments below on who are you going to be pulling for, who are you skipping, or are you just going to not pull for everyone and wait for version 3. So word of the day is going to be devs listened, as per usual, right? So join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join TikTok, join Twitter. All the best for gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.